So I think, what you need to do is you need to have a plan. I mean, first of all, you should only be looking at the 10K. I talk to people. Last week, I think I mentioned to you, I was down in Florida talking to members of the American Association of Individual Investors, which is, a large group of primarily individual investors, as the name implies. And there was, there was an older gentleman in there who was clearly retired. And he was like, I was giving my little presentation. He said to me, he's like, I don't have time to read the filings. He's like, I have, it's too much work, too time consuming. And I was like, well, I said, how many stocks do you own? And he said, about 15. And I was like, well, which of those 15 are you willing to take a loss on? And of course, you know what the answer to that was, right? Didn't want to take a loss on any of them. Who wants to who wants to volunteer? I'm willing to take a loss on, a third of them or whatever. And, it just became very interesting to me. He said, he didn't have the time. And I was like, here's this guy who's retired, and is basically taking time to come to this meeting on investing. And so he should have nothing but time to really read these things. And it just really made it clear to me that investors are not. And I think that it's because, it's not something that, it's not easy reading. Let's be honest about it. Some of these filings, I think the largest filing that we came across during the most recent 10K season was something like 2,200 pages. Now, who wants to volunteer to read a 2,200 page filing? You go downstairs and ask, 100 people on the street, you're not going to get a single taker that's going to say, sign me up, I want to read that 2,200 pages. Even guys who work at hedge funds or lawyers who are paid to write the stuff, they don't want to even read the 2,200 pages. So you really need to have a plan, and this kind of gets to what we talk about. Obviously you should only be reading this if it's a significant, from an individual perspective, you should be reading this if it's a very significant position for you. So if you own 100 shares, maybe, then you need to do the analysis and say, is it really worth my time? But then you also need to be willing to, think about losing on that. But if it's a significant position for you, I think that you really need to be spending some time looking at, what's really going on and understanding the subtle nuances that are in the filings. And that's really what we're all about, is understanding sort of what we call that accounting. These filings are not written in English. In theory, they are written in English. But, it's written in some kind of what I call accounting speak and legal speak. That's kind of like this mash of English, and you really need to figure out what's really going on between the lines. So it's not I often joke around, it's not like picking up the Da Vinci Code or something on a over the weekend and sitting out at the beach. Getting through these filings are very complex and very complicated to read because they're not designed to make it easy for you. But because of that, because of all these barriers to entry, so to speak, I think back on my training, I majored in economics, and you think about a barrier to entry. Well, the barrier to entry is that it's not easy and fun to read, and that's your big barrier. And so yet, if you take the time and invest the time to read them, chances are you're going to get something that other people are not going to get. And that's where you can, find value in investing.